In the last two videos, we talked about Ethereum. We looked at a bullish reversal. We watched the market become indecisive. We saw a trader enter, then lose patience. And finally, we watched Ethereum move strongly in the direction that trader originally expected. But now, I want to ask you something. What did Ethereum actually teach us about trading? Was the lesson about Ethereum? Was it about the bullish engulfing pattern? Was it about market structure? Or was it about something much deeper? Because when I look at this example, I don't see a trader who simply made a bad trade. I see something much more interesting. I see a trader who may have understood where the market could go, but didn't understand how the market could get there. And maybe that's one of the biggest problems in trading. We want the market to move directly from our entry to our target. We enter and we expect price to move. We expect confirmation, we expect momentum. We expect the market to prove us right. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when the market moves sideways? What happens when nothing seems to happen? What happens when the market makes you question the decision you just made? This is where the emotional battle begins. At first, you feel confident. You believe you made the right decision. You look at your position and you think, this trade should work. Everything I saw was there. The bullish reversal appeared. Support was recovered. So why isn't price moving? Then the market continues to move sideways. Minutes become hours. And slowly, confidence turns into doubt. You start checking the chart more often. You look at every candle. You start analyzing every small movement. And eventually, you begin to feel uncomfortable. Maybe you think, maybe I entered too early. Maybe I misunderstood the market. Maybe I should just close the trade. And this is where something very interesting happens. The trader begins to confuse discomfort with invalidation. The position feels uncomfortable, so the trader assumes the idea must be wrong. But those two things are not necessarily the same. And eventually, the trader gives up. They close the buy, they walk away. And maybe at that moment, they feel relieved. The emotional pressure is gone. The position is closed. No more uncertainty, no more watching the chart, no more asking, should I stay? Should I exit? But then the market starts moving strongly, and it moves in exactly the direction they originally expected. And suddenly, the emotional pain becomes much greater, because now the trader doesn't simply think, I lost. They think, I was right. And that's a completely different kind of pain, because the trader believes they should have made money. They had the right idea. They saw the right pattern. They entered the right direction. They were watching the right market. But somehow, they still lost. Not necessarily because the market proved them wrong, but because they couldn't stay with their idea long enough to allow the market to reveal what it was building. And this creates one of the most frustrating experiences in trading. You don't feel like you were wrong. You feel like you were robbed of the profit you deserved. You look at the chart and you think, I knew it. I told myself Ethereum would go up. I was right. So why did I lose? And this is where many traders become trapped emotionally. They begin to blame themselves. They blame their entry. They blame their timing. They blame the market. They blame the strategy. Sometimes they even start searching for another strategy because they believe if I had a better strategy, I wouldn't have made this mistake. But maybe the problem wasn't the strategy. Maybe the problem was the trader's relationship with uncertainty. Because trading creates a very uncomfortable situation. You have to make a decision before you know the outcome. You enter and then you wait. But while you wait, your brain wants certainty. Your brain wants confirmation. Your brain wants to know, am I right? Is this trade going to work? Should I stay? Should I exit? And the market doesn't answer immediately. The market simply continues developing. And that's where many traders struggle. They don't always lose because their analysis was wrong. Sometimes they lose because they couldn't tolerate the uncertainty between the moment they entered and the moment the market finally revealed its intention. They were right about the potential direction, but they were wrong about one thing. They expected the market to prove them right immediately, and the market doesn't work that way. Sometimes, before buyer produces a strong bullish impulse, the market needs to move sideways. Sometimes, before seller completely loses control, seller needs to fail. Sometimes, the most important information is not a higher high, It is the fact that seller failed to produce a lower low. And when you understand that, you begin to see the market differently. You stop treating every sideways movement as a reason to exit. You stop assuming that every delay means your analysis is wrong. And you begin to understand that the market is constantly communicating through structure. This is why I believe trading is much deeper than simply predicting price direction. Because anyone can say Ethereum will go up or Ethereum will go down. But the real challenge is understanding what is the market building while it is moving? What is happening beneath the candles? What is happening between the impulses? What is happening during the pullbacks? What is happening when the market becomes indecisive? And perhaps most importantly, what has actually been invalidated? Because these are two completely different things. Price not moving in your direction doesn't automatically mean your idea is wrong. A market moving sideways doesn't automatically mean your analysis has failed. And a delayed movement doesn't automatically mean you made a bad decision. Sometimes it simply means the market hasn't finished revealing itself. So maybe the real problem in trading isn't always predicting the direction. Maybe the real problem is understanding the journey, because the market may eventually go from point A to point B. But what happens between A and B? Does it move directly? Does it move sideways? Does it pull back? Does it test the previous structure? Does one side attempt to regain control? Does that attempt succeed? Or does it fail? And what does that failure mean? These questions are often more important than simply asking, where will price go? Because if you only focus on the destination, you may not understand the journey. And if you don't understand the journey, you may abandon your position before the market reaches its destination. And maybe this is what Ethereum really taught us. You can be right about the direction and still lose. You can have the right entry and still exit too early. You can correctly identify a potential change in authority and still miss the move, because being right is not enough. You need to understand what the market is building while you wait. Now, there is something else I want to share. For a while now, we've been talking about trading on this channel: market structure, price action, authority, fractal movements, trading psychology. But if you look at the content on this channel, you'll notice something interesting. Not every video is about trading. Some of the videos here are about workshop, body, and paint. At first, these subjects may seem completely unrelated: trading and repairing a damaged vehicle, the market and a workshop, charts and body and paint processes. But I believe there is actually a common thread between them: system thinking. Because whether you're trying to understand a market or trying to understand how a workshop operates, you are dealing with a system. A system has structure, a system has relationships, a system has processes, a system has cause and effect. And when something goes wrong, you don't simply look at the final result. You try to understand what happened inside the system that created that result. That's how I see trading. And that's also how I see a body and paint workshop. The surface may look different, the problems may look different, but the way of thinking can be surprisingly similar. You observe the system, you identify the structure, you understand the relationships, you look for the real cause, not just the visible symptom, and you try to understand how one part affects another. This is why, if you are interested in the way I think about systems, you may also find the body and paint workshop videos on this channel interesting. Not because you have to become a body and paint technician, but because you may begin to see that the same way of thinking can be applied to completely different fields. Trading is one system, a workshop is another system, but the mindset behind understanding them can be the same: system thinking. And maybe that's the bigger journey of this channel. Not simply learning how to trade, not simply learning how to repair a vehicle, but learning how to think in systems. So if you're curious, feel free to explore the other videos on this channel. You may find something unexpected. You may discover that a lesson from a workshop can change the way you look at trading. Or perhaps a lesson from trading can change the way you look at a completely different system. Because sometimes the most powerful ideas are not limited to one field. They can travel, they can connect, and they can change the way we see the world. And maybe that's why trading is so hard to understand, not because the market is impossible to read, but because we are often asking the wrong questions. Subscribe to Bias Positive Digital Rise on YouTube. Let's build a community of people who don't just watch things happen, but learn to understand why they happen. And I want to ask you, after watching the 2 Ethereum examples, what do you think trading is really about? Is it about predicting direction, or is it about understanding what the market is building before that direction becomes obvious? And perhaps, is trading itself just another system that requires us to think differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it. Let's learn from each other. And let's build this community together.